So earlier we talked about some of the first staging around invitation when we think about creating our walks and developing an experience for people. And we broke that down under the two T's and four P's. So going into that just a little bit further to wrap that up, invitation really is the beginning of what we call a bubble. It's a bubble of connection. And again, we're under the larger umbrella of maximizing connection. And so when we think about holding a group of people from the very beginning, when they see a flyer, they see the event somewhere, maybe online, maybe in a cafe, to when they show up throughout the walk, and then after, we're talking about this bubble of connectivity. They feel a part and safe in their choosing the whole time. That's the goal for how we're doing what we're doing. And so obviously we're flexible. We know it's not going to work out for everyone all the time, but that's where we're aiming together as a community. And so the other thing that helps to maximize that bubble is thinking about what we call permissions. So as leaders, we can give a variety of permissions, and it's up to you and your comfort level with some of this, and it's just going to take practice. So but the biggest reminder here when we think about permissions, what we're talking about is we're giving people permission to name when they're feeling injured or they're feeling sore, and that you're a safe person that they can go to. We're thinking about permissions related to if we're on a longer walk and it's maybe 6-10 miles, that we're giving people permission to go off on their own and not need to be chatting and talking the whole time. Permissions around if you need, this walk might go a little longer because we're trying a new part of the park. So if you need to leave early, that's okay. Here's a way to do that. You're giving people permission to show up the way they need to. And it lives in a lot of different forms, but it's really important, the permission space, especially around injury or especially around kind of the culture of Walk to Connect and what we're trying to do together, that you give a little more time to give people some space, to give new people that space. So if you're doing a regular weekly walk and you've got maybe 6 or 7 or 10 people who've heard it all before, who know who you are, they understand what you're all about, they're probably ready to go. But you've got 1 or 2 new people who are trying this for the first time, and you have no idea what their background is or what their stories are and what brings them to the walk. They could just be recovering from physical therapy. They could be in transition in a really difficult time and really need community and connection. So your sensitivity to the new people in that experience, in permission building and invitation, is really critical. So this leads and flows into what we call harmony and how we sustain harmony within the walking experience. So it obviously we're now transitioning. Now we've invited people. They understand what the walking experience is. We've given healthy permission for people to show up how they need to, and now we're moving and we're creating and we're sustaining harmony. And so this is when we start. How do we take this idea of a bubble and really start moving with it? So this is the space where, as a leader, you're activating how you see people moving together, how you see maybe someone who is maybe having a more difficult time keeping up because all of a sudden you realize your group is pretty fast and there's a couple slower folks. So there's a lot of ways you can handle these things as you go. One of the things, just as an example, is you can stop people at an intersection, have conversation. Most people will continue chatting, and the people will catch up, take a little break, and you keep going. You don't need to spell that out and say it, but you can create these different practices as a leader that can help people catch up, help people still feel connected. If you have other leaders on your walk or someone who's a regular, you can ask them to walk with maybe the folks that are kind of on the back end or who might need some support, that you're activating other leaders within your walking group. Again, so we're not isolating people, because that, again, when we're maximizing connection, we're not isolating people unless the people are choosing to be on their own, which is totally fine. But you checking in on them and you creating a space for them to catch up and recalibrate the conversational structure that started, you're allowing that bubble and that harmony to move along. So when we think about harmony, we're now moving with everyone on the walking trip. So we're engaged. People are starting to chat. You're activated. So harmony still, obviously, needs to show up as how you hold this group now that is activating the public realm, whether it's a trail or sidewalks or streets. So your practice in this area is going to evolve over time. You're not going to get it all right away. You're going to learn, you're going to see, and that's the best way, really, to just be paying attention to what you're seeing, where you see people that are possibly disconnecting. Sometimes maybe even people are getting stuck talking to the same person the whole time, and maybe that person likes to talk a lot, which is great, and we want that. But there's ways you can create different arrangements as a leader that allow people to find a space where they can feel like they need to connect or they want to connect. So when we think about moving people through this experience, there's a lot of things you can do. And we talked, I briefly described earlier where you can stop at an intersection and let people catch up. Sometimes that also, you could point out, maybe it's a historical home, maybe there's facts about the river that you're walking next to, maybe there's something general about Walk to Connect that's coming up that you can share. In that space, people can shuffle who they're talking to and find someone else and rearrange the group. Again, you're doing this as a way of, because it's helping to keep that bubble healthy. They have no idea, and they're just doing it naturally, which is a part of what makes this experience. We're maximizing connection for as many people as we can. So the harmony space just moves through the entire trip. A big thing to note, just as a leader, if you ever notice anyone who's feeling disconnected or feeling you see somebody who's moving, and it looks like they might be uncomfortable, it's really important for you as the leader to be the one that at least tries to check in on them. That just says, hey, is everything okay? Or how are you doing? Or thanks for coming. New people are joining you, and they're not talking to anybody because the regulars are talking to each other. It's okay for you to leave your conversation to engage the new people and make them feel connected and comfortable. You don't need to smother them the whole time, but it's important to dip in and to connect and to check in. So these are just small things that really help to keep that connectivity moving along. Of course, with long distance walks where you're going to be doing half-day trips, multi-day trips, full-day trips, it's a different arrangement because people know they have all day. So you don't need to overthink that. In fact, sometimes it's even helpful to really push people to not be talking the whole time, to allow them the space to have some solo time, to walk on their own a little bit in the longer experiences. So it's almost the reverse effect where you want people to connect and you want people to find ways to get to know one another in the shorter trips, but the longer ones, you're almost working to find ways to get people to find their own space. There's a lot of arrangements, but you'll find that in practicing these things, you'll feel out what's comfortable for you as a leader.